Have you ever noticed how a bad few moments can start feeling like proof? Proof that you're behind and proof that you're not good enough. Proof that life works for everyone except you. And it doesn't happen all at once. That's what makes it dangerous. At first, it's just a setback. Your business failed. You missed an opportunity. You've been rejected through an email. You and Pookie broke up. You set a goal and you didn't reach it. And by themselves, those moments don't define you. But if they happen close enough together, something begins to shift. By the way, I'm Aaron, and I help you change how you see yourself so that you can stop surviving life emotionally and actually start thriving. So if that sounds good to you, hit the subscribe button. I'm glad you're here. Have you ever been there where those losses stop feeling like experiences? And in fact, they start feeling personal? Maybe you stop saying that didn't work and you start saying I don't work. You stop saying that you failed, but you start saying that you're a failure. You stop saying you lost the opportunity and you start saying that maybe you're someone that opportunities don't happen for. And once that shift begins, everything changes. Because the most dangerous thing about losing isn't losing. It's allowing losing to tell you who you are. And maybe you know exactly what that feels like. The exhaustion of starting over. The frustration of giving your best and coming up short. The embarrassment of telling people about your dreams and then watching the whole dream start to fall apart. The quiet disappointment of looking at your life and thinking, I should be further along by now. You see other people winning. They're building businesses, they're finding opportunities, they're creating momentum in their life. And here you are, stuck asking questions that are slowly poisoning your identity. You replay old mistakes, you relive old failures, you recarry old disappointments. And then one day you wake up and realize that you've stopped expecting good to happen to you. Not because you don't want the good, but because disappointment has taught you to protect yourself. If my standards are lower, I won't be disappointed. If I don't put myself out there, I won't get my heart broke. So you dream smaller, play safer, and risk less. You stop talking about the things you want, not because you stopped caring, but because hope feels dangerous. And that is the hidden cost of repeated setbacks. Because you see, they don't just challenge your circumstances, they challenge your identity. And every difficult season asks a question most people never even realize that they're answering. Who are you because this happened? And how you answer that shapes everything that comes next. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus wasn't lazy. Marcus wasn't entitled. Marcus wasn't afraid of work. You know, there's some people out there that are afraid of work. He had dreams, big dreams. He wanted to create something meaningful. He wanted to build financial freedom, become someone his family could depend on. And for years, he worked hard. He showed up. He stayed optimistic and he believed in his heart that things would eventually work out. Then life happened because life be life. Business idea failed. Promotion went to someone else. A relationship ended and an opportunity that he was counting on ended overnight. None of those moments broke him individually, but together they started creating a pattern. At least that's what Marcus believed. One evening after receiving another rejection email, Marcus just sat in his car silent. He didn't turn on the radio, he didn't start the engine, he just sat, staring through the windshield. Because this wasn't the first disappointment, he could handle that. This wasn't the second disappointment, he could handle that. Take a licking and keep on ticking. This wasn't the third or the 10th disappointment. And for the first time, a thought crossed his mind that scared him. Maybe this is just who I am. Maybe I'm not someone who wins. Now, it's important that we understand something. That wasn't the moment Marcus lost. That was the moment Marcus accepted an identity. Because identities are rarely formed in dramatic moments. They're formed quietly, one experience at a time, one story at a time, an interpretation at a time. Life hands you an experience and you assign the meaning. And that meaning becomes a belief. And the belief becomes an identity. And eventually, that identity becomes your life. That's exactly what happened to Marcus. His circumstances didn't change him overnight. The story he attached to his circumstances did. Because identities, they aren't built from facts. They're built from repeated experiences paired with repeated stories. And once Marcus accepted the story, his behavior started to change. He stopped taking risks. He stopped putting himself out there. He stopped applying for opportunities. He stopped believing. And it wasn't because he lacked ability. It was because he lacked expectation. And maybe that's where you're at right now. Maybe you've accepted a season as a sentence. Maybe you're allowing one failure to define you. Maybe you've allowed this difficult season to become an identity. Maybe you've allowed circumstances to answer questions that only you should answer. Because circumstances make terrible authors. They can describe what happened, but they can't determine what you become. Only you could do that. That's your responsibility. That is your power. And that's why this conversation matters. Because your future isn't being shaped by what happens to you. It's being shaped by what you believe about yourself because of what happened to you. And if that's true, changing our lives starts with changing the story. Because the moment you realize losing is an experience and not an identity, everything changes. If losing can become an identity, winning can too. And that's important for you to understand because most people believe that winning is something that we do. It's not. Winning is something you become. Now, before we go further, let me clear this up. When I say winner, I'm not talking about someone who never struggles. I'm not talking about someone who never experiences failure. I'm not talking about someone whose life is perfect. Because if that's the definition of winning, man, none of us qualify. Life doesn't work that way. I wish it did. But the truth is, everyone gets knocked down. Everyone experiences setbacks. Everyone loses sometimes. So the difference isn't whether or not you lose. The difference is what you believe those losses mean. And people who consistently create momentum in their lives, they understand something that others don't. Winning isn't the absence of adversity. Winning is refusing to let adversity determine your identity. That's a L I'm just not going to take. Your identity influences your expectations. Your expectations influence your behavior. Your behavior influences your results, and your results reinforce the identity. That's the cycle. That's the domino effect. And whether you realize it or not, you're already living inside one. Identity, expectation, behavior, results, identity. And it's happening over and over again, every day. Every decision of your life, every season of your life is put through that cycle. Think about someone who believes they're not good with money. That identity creates an expectation, meaning they expect to struggle financially. And because they expect to struggle, they avoid learning, they procrastinate, they make emotional decisions. And those behaviors create predictable results, more financial stress. And those results reinforce that identity that they're not good with money. See how quickly the dominoes fall? Now think about someone who believes they're resilient. That identity creates different expectations. They expect obstacles, but they also expect to overcome them. And because they expect to overcome the obstacles, their response is different. They stay curious, they adapt, they persist, and they learn. And those behaviors create better results, and those results reinforce the identity. Another domino fell. This is what researchers call the winner effect. Across sports, businesses, leadership, even relationships, small wins create momentum. And it's not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because the person changes. Confidence grows, belief expands, the tolerance for risk increases, the willingness to begin again becomes stronger, and enter our cycle again. Success creates evidence. Evidence strengthens identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior creates another success. Another domino falls. Then another. Then another. And what many miss is the opposite is also true. Losing creates momentum too. Repeated setbacks create doubt. Doubt lowers expectation. Lower expectation reduces effort. Reduced effort gives poorer outcomes. And poor outcomes reinforce the identity. And before long, people stop expecting good to happen. Not consciously, subconsciously. You walk into opportunities expecting rejection. You enter relationships making up problems in your head. I hate how he chews. You start new goals expecting failure. And because expectations shape your behavior, you unknowingly create the very outcome that you're trying to avoid, the very one that you fear. I love what Myron Golden says. Myron Golden said that expectation, it is our greatest superpower. Have you ever noticed how differently you show up when you expect things to go well? Your energy changes, your posture changes, your confidence changes, you speak differently and you take more risks. You recover faster when things don't go perfectly. And now think about how you show up when you expect failure. You hesitate, you overthink, you hold back, you protect yourself. You stop giving your full effort because disappointment feels inevitable. You start preparing for loss before life has even had a chance to respond. That's why expectation matters so much. Because expectations don't just predict the future, they help create it. Not because you're manifesting success, not because you're pretending that challenges don't exist, but because expectations influence actions, and actions influence outcomes. Think about Marcus. The moment he accepted the identity that he is just someone that doesn't win, everything changed, not overnight, but quietly. He stopped applying for opportunities. He stopped reaching out. He stopped trying new things. He stopped putting himself in positions where success was possible. Not because he lacked talent, not because he lacked potential, because his expectation had changed and his behavior followed suit. The truth is, people rarely outperform the identity that they believe about themselves. You can force different behaviors for a while. You can rely on motivation temporarily. You can push yourself for a season. But eventually, your behavior will trend back towards what feels normal, what feels familiar, what feels true. That's why identity matters so much. Because people tend to act in alignment with who they believe they are. If success feels foreign, you will unconsciously avoid it. You'll resist it. If growth feels unfamiliar, you'll retreat from it. If winning feels out of character, you'll sabotage it. Not because you want to fail, but because your mind is always working to protect the identity that you've accepted, even when that identity is hurting you. So the question isn't, do you want to win? Most people do. The real question for those of you out there in YouTube land is, does winning feel like who you are? Does resilience feel normal? Does perseverance and growth feel normal? Or have you become so familiar with disappointment that success feels uncomfortable? Because the goal isn't to convince yourself that life will always go your way. The goal is to become someone who trusts no matter what life brings. Someone who believes, I can learn, I can grow, I can recover. I can achieve what seems impossible because I am a believer. That's the identity of a winner. Not someone who never loses, someone who never allows losing to become who they are. And the truth is, y'all, I'm down south where we say y'all. So if you in the north, enjoy your unsweetened tea. But the truth is, circumstances may challenge you. They may delay you, they may test you, but they don't get to define you. Identity does. And the moment you start to understand that, y'all, you stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? And you start asking, what identity am I reinforcing? Because every thought, every action, and every choice, every behavior, every response is another domino. But the question is, which way are your dominoes falling? If identity shapes expectations and expectations shape behavior, then there's an important question that we have to ask. Where does identity come from? Because nobody is born believing that they're not good enough. Nobody enters the world saying they always fail. Nobody starts life convinced that success is for other people and not for them. These stories are learned, and if they can be learned, they can be unlearned. But first, you have to recognize where they came from. Every person has an internal narrator, a voice that quietly explains what life's experiences mean. The event happens, then the narrator speaks. You get rejected, here come the narrator. Well, as we see here, folks, Tommy was never enough. You make a mistake, here comes the narrator. Well, as you see here, folks, Tommy should just give up. This always happens to him. You experience a setback? Well, as you see, folks, nothing ever works out for Tom. The event lasts a moment, but the story can last a lifetime. And eventually we stop questioning the narrator. Hey, get out of here, talking that mess. In fact, we accept the version of events as truth. That's why two people can lose their jobs and one could say, hey, I lost my job, and the other one can say, I lost my value. What? Two people experience rejection. One says that wasn't the right opportunity. The other person says opportunities never happened to me. What? In the human experience, there's often a spin on the same event. But regardless of the event, it's the story that determines the future. And take this with you, YouTube. Your life moves in the direction of the story that you repeatedly tell yourself. Not the story you tell other people, the story you tell yourself, the one where no one else is listening, the one repeated after disappointment, the one you return to after a difficult season, the story you believe about who you are. Because repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates identity. That's why so many of your limiting beliefs feel true, not because they are true, but because you've repeated them long enough to believe them. You're well acquainted. And maybe your story sounds like you're always behind. You're not disciplined. You're bad with money. You're not a leader. You never finish what you start. You don't have what it takes. And maybe nobody ever said those exact words to you. But maybe life did. Maybe a failed relationship did. Maybe a difficult childhood did. Maybe a teacher, a parent, difficult season of loss did. Maybe you've absorbed those beliefs slowly, one experience at a time, until eventually they stop feeling like opinions. They start feeling like facts. But here's what you need to understand. Experience creates emotions. Emotions create stories, and stories create identities. But identities aren't destiny. They are simply decisions repeated over time. And decisions can change. Marcus didn't wake up one morning and decide that he's not someone who wins. That belief was built gradually. Each setback became another piece of evidence. Each disappointment reinforced the story until eventually he stopped seeing possibilities. He only saw patterns, and that's what limiting beliefs do. They turn possibilities into patterns. They convince you that your past predicts your future, that who you've been determines who you'll become. But your past is not a prophecy. It's information, nothing more. And the problem here is most people allow their history to become their identity. They let old experiences define current expectations, and current expectations to shape future outcomes. That's how you get trapped. It's not by circumstances, by stories. Because the human mind craves certainty. We need that. And in fact, even painful certainty feels safer than uncertain possibility. At least painful certainty feels familiar. That's why many stay loyal to identities that hurt them. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. Don't speed past that. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. Think about how many people stay stuck because staying stuck feels predictable. How many people stay quiet because rejection feels familiar? How many people stop trying because disappointment feels normal? Not because they can't change, but because changing their identity is uncomfortable. And even so, growth has always required discomfort. And we cannot become someone new while remaining loyal to the old story. At some point, we gotta change narrators. At some point, you have to question the voice. Is this true? Or is this a story that I've repeated to myself so many times that I believe it's true? Not every thought deserves your trust. Not every belief deserves your loyalty. Not every story deserves another chapter. Some stories need to end. And maybe today is the day that you stop accepting identities that were birthed through pain. Maybe today is the day that you stop allowing old failures to define new possibilities. Maybe today is the day that you stop confusing what happened to you with who you are. You are not your worst moment. You are not your last failure. You are not the opinions of people who couldn't see your potential. You're not the labels you've carried, and no, you're not the story you've outgrown. You are who you decide to believe next. And here's the challenge. You can't simply think your way into a new identity. You have to build evidence for it. And that's exactly where most people get stuck. They wait to feel different before they act different. But transformation works the exact opposite. You act differently first. You begin to believe different. Then your identity changes. Which raises an important question. If identities are built through evidence, how do we create evidence? How do I push the first domino in the right direction? Marcus didn't wake up the next morning feeling different. He didn't suddenly become confident. He didn't magically believe in himself again. And in fact, if you would have asked how he felt that morning, he would have told the truth. Discouraged, tired, unsure. The rejection email from the night before while he was sitting in the car, that's still fresh on his mind. The doubts were still there. The old story was still loud. But something inside him had shifted. Not his confidence, his willingness. Because he began to realize something important. He didn't need to change his entire life that day. He just needed to stop reinforcing the identity that was keeping him stuck. So he made one promise to himself, a small one that he knew he could keep. Not because that one action would change everything, but because breaking another promise to himself would. See, many overestimate the power of one big decision and underestimate the power of a small kept promise. Hey, because every promise you keep sends yourself a message that says, I can trust myself. And every action is evidence. It's evidence that you're capable, that you're resilient, evidence that you're becoming someone different. An identity is built on evidence, not intention, not desire or motivation. Evidence. This is why waiting to feel confident does not work. Confidence isn't the cause of action. It is the result of action. You don't become confident and then do things. You do things and then you become confident. And that misunderstanding keeps you stuck for years. You're waiting to feel ready. You're waiting to feel motivated. You're waiting to believe in yourself. Meanwhile, the transformation you desire so deeply is waiting on the other side of the action that you refuse to take. Think about it. What's one promise that you stopped making to yourself because you started believing that you're someone that'll never keep it? Getting up earlier, exercising, starting the business, having the difficult conversation, applying for the opportunity. Maybe it's as simple as believing that your future can be different from your past. What promise have you stopped making because you stopped trusting yourself? Because self-trust isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built quietly, one promise at a time. Marcus started small. He updated his resume. He went for a walk and made a phone call that he had been avoiding. He applied for one opportunity. Small things. Things most people would overlook because every action created evidence. And evidence challenged the story. The old narrator would say Marcus is someone who doesn't win, but his actions started saying something different. Kick the old narrator out. Now his actions were saying, I show up. I keep going. I don't quit. And this is how identity changes. Not in one giant leap, one domino at a time. Are you tipping it towards what you want? Or are you tipping it towards what you don't want? And I've said it here before, and I'm going to keep saying it, that every decision you make is casting a vote, either to one direction or to the other. So stop asking, what's one thing that will change my life? And start asking, what's one small promise I can keep? Push the domino in the right direction. Momentum isn't created by massive action. It's created by consistent action. And once you tip that domino in the right direction, something remarkable happens. You don't wait for proof that you're a winner. You start creating it. But that raises another question. What happens when winning starts to feel normal? What happens when resilience becomes a part of your identity? What have you normalized? When I'm saying that you should expect to win, I need you to understand what I mean. I didn't say expect life to be easy. I didn't say expect success to happen quickly. I didn't say expect to be entitled to outcomes that you ain't earned yet. That's not confidence, that is fantasy. But real grounded confidence sounds different. Real confidence says no matter what happens, I'll figure it out. If I fail, I learn. If I fall, I get up. If this door closes, well, it wasn't for me, and I'll find another. That's the identity of a winner. Not someone who never loses, but someone who refuses to let losing become permanent. We all normalize something. Some people normalize growth, others normalize excuses. Some people normalize resilience, others normalize quitting. Some people normalize taking responsibility, some people normalize blaming circumstances. So what have you normalized? Have you normalized taking yourself out of opportunities? Have you normalized expecting disappointment? Have you normalized playing small? Or maybe you've normalized self-doubt. Whatever feels normal becomes your identity. And whatever becomes your identity shapes your future. That's why winners move differently. They got a different swag. Not because they're more talented or because they have better luck, but because they've made the decision that quitting is out of character. Growth is normal, learning is normal, stepping up is normal, adapting to whatever happens, it's normal. And it's so normal to them that for them to eventually not win would feel strange. And it's not because life owes them anything, but because they built an identity that refuses to stay down. Think about someone who exercises consistently. They don't wake up every morning debating on whether or not they should work out. Their identity already made the decision. Think about someone who keeps their word. They don't negotiate with themselves every time a commitment becomes inconvenient. Their identity has already made the decision. The same is true for resilience, perseverance, and win. Once it's a part of your identity, your behavior changes naturally. Can I do this changes to how will I do this? What if I fail changes to what will this teach me if I do? Why is this happening to me changes to who is this helping me become? Because winning isn't expecting perfect circumstances. Winning is expecting yourself to stay committed regardless of circumstances. And that's why the greatest advantage you develop isn't talent. It's self-definition. Because if you don't decide who you are, your circumstances will try to tell you. It's a dangerous thing to outsource. Imagine meeting yourself 5 years from now. Not the version created by current circumstances, the version created by your current identity. The version who didn't quit, the version who kept showing up, the version who kept pushing dominoes forward when nobody was watching, the person who stopped allowing setbacks to answer the question of who they are. What would that version say to who you are today? Will they tell you to give up? Will they tell you that this difficult season means that you're not enough? Will they tell you that one failure defines your future? Absolutely not. I think they would remind you of something you've forgotten, that the obstacles weren't the end of the story. They were the beginning of your transformation. Because every setback is trying to hand you an identity. Here, take this one. Rejection says you're not enough. Here, take this one. Failure says you're not capable. Here, take this one. Disappointment says, stop trying. Here, take this one. Fear says, stay where it's safe. Here, take this one. But the question I put on the table today is, will you accept those identities? Will you listen to the narrator, or will you evict him and change the story? That's the real winner effect. Winners don't keep winning because life treats them differently. Winners keep winning because they refuse to let life define them. They understand what most people never realize. And that's that circumstances describe what happened, but they don't define who we become. You do. I do. And I've created this video to say this directly to you. You are not your worst moment. You are not your biggest mistake. You are not your last setback. You are not what happened. And you still have a choice. You get to choose who you become because of what happened. And that choice is presented to you every single day. In every decision, in every promise you keep, in every domino you push. Keep the promise, change the story, and raise the standard. Because when winning becomes a part of your identity, it's no longer a question of if, it's only a matter of when. Always remember that growth is a journey, it's not a destination. I'm in it with you, and I will see you on the next one.